From the Middle East, rockets hitting Israel on the second day of President Obama's visit there. Militants in Gaza firing into southern Israel, and Joel Rosenberg's a former aide to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, author of the Damascus Countdown. Sir, good morning to you.
Good to see you, Bill.
Talk about the rockets in a moment. Principally of your concerns for this trip is Iran. What do you expect to be done about it?
Well, the big question is whether in the private meetings between the Prime Minister and the President, they got down to the clarity of whether Iran is at the red line. The big question is whether Iran has gotten the nuclear weapons or is close to them. There is a report out from a former CIA official, agent in Iran, that there's a new facility that's just breaking now. We'll see how that goes. But the question is, how much time does Prime Minister Netanyahu believe he has until he would have to strike, and does the President support him on that?
And your piece at FoxNews.com is very well written. One of the main points you make, Joel, is whether or not the President would give the green light for Israel to take out sites in Iran if indeed you can prove that the sanctions and covert operations have failed. On the map here, Iran to the east. You're talking a distance here from what? Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, perhaps a little longer than that. Advance at one time, because the rockets that were fired earlier today came right down here in Gaza. This is an area that's about 44 miles from the center of Tel Aviv, the main and most populous section of the country of Israel. We can zoom in on the map here and just show you a little closer here for the geography of where all this is surrounded here. And what do viewers need to understand?
Well, we're talking about just moments. You have seconds if a rocket is fired from Gaza into southern Israel. I was there during the war in November. Thousands of rockets and missiles were coming in, and we had a situation where Iron Dome rockets were firing those down. But the big issue ultimately isn't the rockets from Gaza. That's almost a nuisance in the geopolitical sense. It's missiles from Iran and from Syria with chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. That's the worst case scenario. I write about it in my new book, Damascus Countdown, but it's not fiction. Right now they're talking about a real threat, and it's coming up close.
Yeah, and what the Israelis have built is the Iron Dome missile defense shield, which has worked tremendously well, as we saw the last time around with Hamas. What is the state of affairs between the relationship of Benjamin Netanyahu and President Obama? How is this going?
Well, it's complicated, but it seems to be improving. The optics are certainly warm. The question is what's happening behind closed doors. But I think both men see it in their interest, in the national interest of both countries, to close the gap. If they have disagreements, keep them behind closed doors. Keep working on that. Don't let disagreements at this moment with this threat from Iran and Syria become public. Keep that daylight limited.
Well, what is public is that the reception that Chuck Hagel has been received by the Israeli people has not been necessarily flattering as a new defense secretary. In addition to that, it is public that Benjamin Netanyahu supported the other guy. He was a fan of Mitt Romney.
Well, listen, these political moments are going to happen, and the U.S. under President Obama has a lot to rebuild in terms of credibility with the Israeli people. The president is trying to divide Jerusalem, roll Israel back to the 1967 borders, which are indefensible, and pressure Israel not to launch a preemptive military strike against Iran. All three of which are issues that Israelis take very personally because it's in their national security interest. But for the president to actually be on the ground in Israel is always a historic moment. It's important with this president and prime minister. And I don't want to be a cynic. I'm a critic of the president's policies on Iran, but I don't want to be a cynic.
One more point here. We mentioned the green light. And you suggest that if the green light has not been given, why not?
Yeah. Well, the press conference yesterday was interesting. It's going to take some time to sift this thing out. But the president repeatedly stated that Israel has the right of self-defense, and the United States should be helping Israel be able to defend itself by itself. That's close to a green light to tell Israel they could launch if they had to. So we're going to have to see this thing. We're going to have to see a few more statements by the president and hear some of the behind-the-scenes reporting in these next few days and weeks.
Joel, great to see you. Joel Rosenberg. Check out his latest column at FoxNews.com. Thank you, Joel. Good to see you. 19